For more on RIMPAC and what it means for relations among participating nations, we're joined by Bonnie Glaser. She's Senior Advisor for Asia at the Center for Strategic and International Studies here in Washington. The institution provides analysis of political, security, and strategic developments in the Asia-Pacific region. Thanks so much for joining us. RIMPAC is organized by the United States. It has more than half the ships and aircraft there. This year's exercise, biggest yet, by inviting nations for the first time like China. What does this say about U.S. military priorities, do you think?
Well, I think that it's clear the United States has been pivoting or rebalancing to the Asia-Pacific region. It wants to promote more cooperation, especially among navies in the region. And there are, as you say, 22 nations whose navies are participating. China's Navy sent 4 ships this time. They are participating in a number of the activities, not all of them. China was an observer to the RIMPAC exercises in 1998, but this is the first year that they are participating. And I think that Washington wants to send a signal that it hopes that China will participate in a more constructive way with other navies in the region.
RIMPAC is growing, so are these ships, and there's also a buildup of navies. What can we expect in the Pacific region in the coming years as all these ships start flooding the area?
Well, I think that there is some modest incremental increase in investment in military capabilities. Frankly, the United States is not expanding substantially its surface fleet in the region. There are some countries that are buying, for example, submarines. The Vietnamese, for example, are procuring kilos. The Malaysians are also expanding. China is probably the country that is expanding its surface and undersea fleet most rapidly.
The U.S. Coast Guard has agreements around the world to enforce international law and international waters as ships operate not just near the U.S. coast, all the way up even to the Arctic Circle. China is being criticized for its expanding Coast Guard. How much room is there for navies like China to grow without conflict?
Well, there's an enormous opportunity for navies to grow. The 2/3 of the world's surface is covered by water. And I think that the United States welcomes China's Navy to operate in the region, especially if it provides public goods, such as cooperating in the anti-piracy operations that take place in the Gulf of Aden, or maybe someday providing for defensive sea lanes of communication. There are potential overlapping interests between the United States and China. Coast Guard ships are also expanding. There is no agreement among navies that is binding to ensure operational safety. Navies in the region have recently agreed on the Code of Unplanned Encounters at Sea, which will enable, hopefully, navies to avoid accidents or incidents and to operate their fleets in safe ways. But no such measures have been discussed so far for Coast Guards. And indeed, today we see Chinese and Vietnamese Coast Guard ships that are ramming each other and using water cannons in a disputed area near the Paracels and in Vietnam's exclusive economic zone. So there needs to be some measures that are agreed to that apply to Coast Guards, and measures that are being adopted by navies in the future should be legally binding. And I think that that would do a great deal to avoid conflict and the potential for escalation in the future.
Bonnie, you know, interestingly enough, I talked to Dean Chung yesterday, and he said, you know, at some point, you build these kind of relationships so that if something does happen, one military guy can get on the phone with another one. They sort of have a relationship. We're still quite a distance from that, though, aren't we?
Yes, I personally think that relationships are important, but they're not enough. You need to have institutions. You need to have legally binding arrangements. But building personal relationships can help. In the past, even the existence of such relationships did not prevent crises from escalating. We saw, for example, in 2001, when there was a collision between a Chinese fighter jet and a U.S. surveillance plane. And the PACOM commander at the time, Admiral Prier, who was then later, of course, was our ambassador during this incident, tried to contact his counterparts and was unable to do so, although he felt that he had built very strong relationships when he had been commander at PACOM.
Bonnie,
yes.
I hate to have any kind of impact on our relationship, but we've run out of time. But I think you made a good point there, and thanks so much for joining us. Certainly appreciate it.
Thank you.